All right, Eastridge, how are you doing today? Yeah! Nothing like a Saturday morning convention, I tell you what. Well, the wait is over. I know that you all have been waiting with bated breath to see this panel, which is now the time. This is Baka Twins, cosplaying on a budget. Baka Twins are East Bay cosplayers who have been cosplaying for over 10 years. They enjoy making their own cosplays, competing in cosplay competitions, and running informative panels about cosplay, like this one. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Baka Twins.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Thank you for coming out to FanCon. We're excited to have you all here. As we were introduced, we're doing a panel on cosplaying on a budget. So we are Baka Twins. We also have our separate accounts as well. So she's DB Nibbles, and I go by Curl. Yes, we've been cosplaying for over 10 years. We kind of lost track after 10 years, so I don't know how many years it has been exactly. But we love making cosplays. We started out by found pieces of clothing together to make our first cosplays, and eventually we got into sewing our own. Cosplay competitions are our passion, whether we're doing just performances or if we're making our own cosplay to enter craftsmanship. So we're gonna teach you a few tips and tricks on how to make a cosplay without going broke. All right, so here's some examples of cosplays I've made on a budget. First cosplay is my Dr. Eggman cosplay. It was about $30, it's handmade. I used remnants that I found at Joann's and remnants from other projects I already had made. The mustache was made from a wig I had that I just kind of took a weft out and turned it into a mustache. And the goggles are made out of foam bits that I had from a previous project. Another one is Astrologian. It was about $65 handmade. I bought the fabric for it at a flea market. So I found a nice fabric. It was a little too thick, and then I traded someone at the flea market for the fabric that I needed for my dress. So it ended up working out, and I ended up saving money by doing that. As well as the trim on it, there's very specific trim for Astrologian. I used my sewing machine to embroider the pattern, sewed it together to make the trim, so that way I didn't have to spend money trying to buy a custom trim. And lastly, my Ingo cosplay, it was about $60. It's handmade and piecemeal. So my shirt and my pants I bought from a store. The tie I bought and I edited. And the jacket and hat is made from a pattern that I edited and sewed together myself. All right, now for my favorite budget cosplays. My first one is Akita Neru from Vocaloid. It was a mixture of piecemeal and handmade, and we'll go more into what piecemeal is in a little bit. So I bought the dress from a thrift store and the belt from a thrift store, and then made the headset. Next is Guido Mista from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That one was about $45. It was a combination of piecemeal and handmade. The pants I bought from a thrift store and then I painted on his stripes. The shirt and the hat I made myself with fleece that I got from Joann's, which fleece is a nice affordable fabric choice. Lastly is Emmett. It was about $65. It's piecemeal and handmade, similar to what my sister did. I made my jacket and I made my hat by editing a pattern. I bought the shirt and the pants and the tie. So topics we're going to cover today. What to consider when selecting your cosplay, what type of cosplay, Is it handmade? Is it bought? Or is it piecemeal? Under handmade, we'll talk about where to get supplies and the importance of mock-ups. For piecemeal, we'll talk about how to put together a cosplay with found items. For wigs on a budget, we'll talk about where to buy and how to style on a budget. And then at the end, we'll have Q&A. So what to consider when selecting your cosplay? You want to think about the level of details. Does your cosplay have a lot of details? Does it have a lot of layers? Is it made from different fabrics or materials? So 2 examples I have here is Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen, and then we have a cosplay or a artwork from Sakizo in the Romantic Jewel series. So if you look at the 2, you can see the difference in level of details. The Sakizo one also has more layering going on, and it has different types of fabrics, because fabrics can have different textures, so you want to be able to do that with a more detailed cosplay. You also want to consider if your cosplay is common or unique. Is the cosplay made of common attire, like school uniforms, right? Those are more common things that you can find compared to the Sakizo that we have here, where it's going to be harder to find the pieces to put together. You'll have to make it on your own. Is it an everyday clothing cosplay? If it's an everyday clothing cosplay, you can always thrift the pieces and put it together, right? Yeah, exactly, right? It's a great way to put a cosplay together on a budget. And then handmade versus bought versus piecemeal. We're going to go into more details. So handmade means it's made from scratch. Like you'll get fabrics from Joann's, or like my sister was talking about getting fabric from the flea market. You use a pattern. Either you can make your own pattern, or you can buy a pattern, or you can use craft foam if it's armor. But that means you're making it all yourself from scratch, constructing everything. Piecemeal, also known as closet cosplay, is a combination of found clothing and objects. It's called closet cosplay because you can just look in your closet, see what things you have lying around, and put it together in order to make a new thing, right? And then bought just means purchased or you didn't make any of it. You can get it from cosplay websites or you can commission someone else. You can also use these techniques together. Like when we shared our favorite cosplays on a budget, we talked about how we use piecemeal as well as handmade. All right, we're gonna talk about handmade, where to get fabric and how to save. All right, so this is where you guys can shop to get fabric for cheap. First of all, Joann's. Sometimes it can be pricey, but it's pretty much everywhere. It's easy to get to. You can use coupons. So if you sign up for coupons in your email, sign up to get them physical in the mail, and have the app, there's usually the same coupon in there but different codes, which means you can end up with 3 or 4 40% off coupons that you can use in the same transaction. So make sure you're signing up to Joann's in different ways so that you're getting all of them. You can also go to their website and find another coupon. Another way to save at Joann's is to look through the remnant section. It's usually by the cut table. There'll be like a yard or sometimes less than a yard pieces of fabric. So if you need something for a smaller detail, this is a great place to look. You can get it for 50% off its current price. So if you find a yard of fabric, this regular price is $20, and that fabric is currently on sale for 50% off, that makes it $10, and it's a remnant, you're gonna get 50% off of that. So you'll be getting a yard of fabric that is normally $20 for $5. So it's a great place to save money. And lastly, for Joann's, I would say keep track of the sales, especially during holidays. They tend to have good sales. Like they recently had a sale where all cosplay and costume fabrics were 50% off. Like that is a steal. So make sure you're paying attention to these sales. They usually don't last long, so make sure you're planning ahead and jump on the sales when you see them. Another place to look is the flea market. As I told the story earlier about how I traded fabric at the flea market for my astrologian cosplay, you can also find places where you can just buy the fabric. So I recently went to the Galt flea market. It's near Sacramento area. There was 3 different vendors that were selling a bunch of fabrics, like tons of fabric, a lot more than what Joann's has, and most of it was $2 a yard. So instead of going to Joann's, if you're able to make it to this flea market, you can save a lot of money, because $2 a yard is ridiculous. I stocked up on fabric for my next cosplay. It was great. But the downside to flea markets is if you're not going to one that always has a vendor selling fabric, you don't really know what's going to be there. So you might go there and there might be no fabric. Or it might not be the fabric you want. So you'll have to think outside the box. So you can look at, can this bed sheet work for what I want? Can this curtain work? So you can find other items there that can work for fabric. Etsy is another great place. You can find fabrics for a good price, and it's usually fabrics you can't find at Joann's. So if you need something with a specific pattern on it, or if you want it holographic, I tend to look on Etsy. A great seller on Etsy is Big Z Fabrics. They also have a website. Their fabric is great price. And if you go to their website, you can order samples. So if you're not sure if a fabric is going to work for your project, instead of buying a bunch of it and wasting money by doing that, you can order a sample from them, see if that's going to work, and then you can buy more of that fabric. Another place, when we first got started, we didn't have the budget for fabric, so we checked Craigslist. And there's usually people giving away their old stash of sewing fabrics. It might not be what you're looking for, it might be older fabrics, but it's a great way to practice if you're new to sewing. eBay is another place. I would say with eBay, the prices are cheap and sometimes the quality can be cheap, so you gotta be cautious of that. And it usually takes a while for things to ship to you. So pay attention to reviews, plan ahead, make sure you can get it pretty cheap, but be prepared just in case it's not the quality you're expecting. And lastly, I would say Amazon is a great place to get fabric. Usually prime shipping, it gets there pretty quick, but pay attention to the descriptions when you buy fabric from Amazon. So I needed pleather for a project, and I saw that it was decently priced, but it said it was a yard, but the yard was by 3 inches, so it was only a strip of the fabric, and that wasn't going to work for what I needed, so make sure you're paying attention to that size. And the Amazon reviews can be super useful, so people can tell you if this fabric is cheap, if it falls apart, if it's sturdy, so you can learn this information without finding out by yourself and wasting money. All right, where to get supplies on a budget? Dollar stores are great. I know most dollar stores aren't really dollar stores anymore. We got the Dollar Tree, which is really a $1.25 tree, but it's still pretty cheap compared to if you go to Michael's to get supplies. So you can go to these stores, you can get sewing supplies. I like to go to 99-cent store. They have an electronic owl, they have lights. So if you want to add that extra touch to your cosplay, like, ooh, what if this lights up? You can get that from the dollar store. Sometimes you can find fabric at the 99-cent store. They'll have them in 2-yard rolls. It's random, so you really don't know what you're going to get. You can get rulers, glues, anything you need to make patterns or your props from the dollar stores. And where to get supplies in this mall. So I'm currently working on a Vash cosplay, and he has one little hoop earring, and I went to Claire's and bought some clip-on hoop earrings that will work for this cosplay. Claire's is great for like finishing touches, so if you need earrings, rings, necklace, cuffs, nose rings, you can get that there. I did a casual Princess Peach cosplay a while back, and I got some press-on nails from Claire's just to add a finishing touch to it. They also have gloves and leggings, and usually there's good sales going on. I went to Claire's last week and they had a buy 3, get 3 free on their jewelry, so it's a great way to save. And if you're looking for Claire's, Claire's is upstairs right behind us. Another place you can shop in this mall is Daiso. So most things are $1.75. in Daiso. You have to pay attention to the price tag. If you don't see it on it, it's usually $1.75. If you see a price tag, it's a little bit more, but you're still getting a wide variety of things. So they generally have a sewing owl, a craft owl. You can get felt, you can get trims, buttons, you can get a whole bunch of things that can help you complete your cosplay. You can get socks, tights, and ties. So for our Ingo and Emmett cosplay, the ties, we bought white ties from Daiso and we dyed it to match the colors we needed for our cosplay. You can get hair clips and eyelashes. My crown kept falling off, so I bought some hair clips from Daiso and glued it to the crown to make sure it stayed in my hair. So it's a great way to get small things to finish your cosplay. There's also glues and resins there. You can think outside the box. You might see like wire for floral and that you can use in a different way in your cosplay. Continuing on the topic of Daiso, the cosplay I'm wearing right now, I'm cosplaying in Miltank. I got quite a few of my supplies from Daiso. So I have buttons on my apron, which is make your own buttons so I can put the fabric on top of them. I got it from Daiso. I used elastic in my sleeves, that's also from Daiso. The stuffing that I use for my ears and my tail is from Daiso. And then also, they have bobbins that are pre-winded with threads in different colors, which is very useful. You can also see my little display here. Pretty much everything here is from Daiso, besides the jar. So I found a little bandana that I used for the top of my milk. The rest is like little toys and little tea sets that I put together to form my prop for my cosplay. All right, another great way to save is by doing mock-ups. So if you're doing a handmade costume, you buy a pattern, or if you make your own pattern, you don't want to get the fabric you want to use for that and make the pattern right away. I suggest getting a cheaper fabric and testing out that pattern. So in my example here, I was making my shirt for Strawberry Miku. I made my own pattern, I made my measurements and everything the way I thought it would work out. Then I got some really cheap fabric from Joann's, tested out my pattern. Turns out the shirt wasn't long enough. I didn't like the shape of the collar. I needed to make edits to it, but I saved money by using a cheaper fabric to test it out, and then using my more expensive fabric on my final one, and I like the way it turned out because I made the edits to it. But one note you want to pay attention to is when you're doing a mock-up, make sure the fabric you're using to test your pattern is similar to the fabric you're going to be using on your final project. So you don't want to test your pattern with cotton if your pattern is going to ultimately be used on a stretchy fabric. So that's going to mess up your pattern. It's not going to fit correctly if you make edits based on that. So just pay attention to that. All right, next I'm going to be talking about piecemeal or closet cosplay. So piecemeal cosplay, where to buy pieces for your cosplay? You can go to the Goodwill, flea market. Flea market is a great place. They normally have really cheap pieces of basic clothing that you can put together with other pieces of clothing or add details to complete your cosplay. Savers. Savers is another thrift store. There aren't as many around anymore, but if you can find one, definitely check that place out. Your closet. Closet is a great place to check because sometimes we have pieces of clothing that we don't wear anymore that's just hanging out in the closet that would be perfect for your cosplay. There's DD's Discount and Ross. They also have affordable clothing, and we normally find like our shoes from DD's and Ross. What to look for? You want to look for base clothing and shoes. So I'm going to use Itadori as an example. When I say base clothing, I mean just plain clothing. Like you can look for a red hoodie as well as a blue shirt, and you can layer those two together to get the same effect as Itadori's jacket. You also want to think outside the box. You can always edit and add things later. So how to put everything together? You can hand make details to add to your thrifted clothing. So like Itadori has buttons on his jacket as well. You can add the buttons. And if he has any other details, you can add that to it. but you have the base clothing already. You can also paint and dye. So the cosplay I'm wearing now started as white cotton, and I dyed it to be the color that I needed it to be. You can also layer the thrifted clothing together, like I was talking about the hoodie and the shirt. Layering those two together will give you the same look as Itadori. And you can also cut and combine. So if layering together is too thick or makes you too hot, you can always cut the pieces that you want off. So you can cut the hood off of the hoodie and sew it to the blue shirt in order to get the same effect. All right, next we're going to talk about wigs and how to save, especially if you need a wig with a lot of volume. You don't have to buy multiple wigs and sew them together. It's going to make things heavier, but I'll show you guys how to get from, you can see my example, the way my Miku wig started and how my strawberry Miku wig turned out. First we'll talk about how to buy wigs online for cheap. So the first place you can check is Amazon. It's usually pretty quick. There's many different sellers that sell cheap wigs on there. I personally like to use Mappa Beauty. We've been using Mappa Beauty wigs for years. They're like $8 to $15. The wig I have on now is Mappa Beauty that I styled. As you can see in the example, that's how my wig started, and this is how I styled it up. So you can get a pretty cheap wig and turn it into whatever you want by styling it. Another way to get good priced wigs is pre-owned. So you can check Mercari, you can check eBay, Poshmark, you can check at swap meets. So Mercari and Poshmark are great for if you want to bundle things together. You'll often see sellers selling multiple wigs, so you can actually bundle them together and you can get them a lot cheaper. So I like Arta wigs as well, and I got 4 Arta wigs for $60 with shipping included on Mercari by bundling it and sending an offer to the seller. Great way to save money. You can also check swap meets. So a lot of cons have swap meets. Like if you go to them, they're usually late at night at anime conventions, and there's usually cosplayers there that are selling things they no longer need. So you can find a wig there that maybe they've already styled, or maybe they didn't actually complete the cosplay they wanted to, so they no longer need this wig. So you can usually get it cheaper than you would for retail price by buying at swap meets. How to style on a budget. So the way you get the fluff that you see in this wig, you saw in my strawberry Miku wig, and you see in my Junko wig here, is a crimping iron. You go through, you crimp it, you comb it out, and it fluffs the wigs out. You can add a lot of volume instead of buying multiple wigs, sewing it together. It's a lot lighter. Another tool you would need is a blow dryer. So if you're using spray glues, you can set it, kind of how you see my spikes. I would set it, spray it with the glue, and use a blow dryer to set it to keep the spikes exactly how you want it. I suggest having multiple combs, different sizes. It's great for if you need a big comb to comb through wigs to detangle it, small comb for smaller details. Sharp scissors are a must, especially if you're cutting spikes. And as I mentioned, Got2b glue is great for styling. The spray is a lifesaver. It's how I style all of my wigs. I like to spray it, comb through it to make sure the spray is getting in between all the wig fibers, and then spray it again and then set it to make sure it's holding. And you can use Got2b glue gel. It's a little stronger, but if you put it on too thick, you will see it on your wig. So just be cautious when doing that. Adding on to this, if you don't have a crimping iron, if you just have a flat iron, you can always flat iron the hair. Then you can do what's called teasing. You can comb backwards or brush backwards against the hair fibers, and that will basically knot it up. When you comb it out, it will give you a similar effect. You can also use tacky glue mixed with water in order to glue things down. All right, we are almost done with this panel. I'm going to give an example of how you can save with making complicated wigs. So this is how I made my Bayonetta wig. I tried to think about how could I not have so much wig on my head. So as you can see in her beehive, there's a lot of hair. Bayonetta has so much hair, but obviously I don't want to do that. That's going to cost too much. It's going to be too heavy. So you want to think about what parts of the wigs are not going to be seen. How can you hide parts that you're going to make your wig out of that isn't wig? How can you cut corners to save cost and to make it lighter? So the materials I use for this wig is EVA foam, headbands, clips, a wig base, and MAGWest. And here's just how it looks. Inside is a cone I made out of EVA foam. I covered it in pleather remnant. I glued the wefts on top into the pattern and put the ribbon and the chain through it, and then glued more wefts on top, and then glued it to a headband. So the headband just sits on top of the base wig. If you guys want to see this one up close, I have my bayonetta wig sitting at the table over here, so feel free to check it out. And yeah, that's it. So now we have question and answer time. If you have any questions about what we talked about, any specifics about a cosplay you're working on, or about cosplay in general, please feel free to ask us any questions. If you don't have any questions right now, feel free to ask us throughout the day. We'll mostly be over here at the judges table. If not, you can always contact us through our socials. You don't have to write these down. We have our business cards on the table, so feel free to stop by and grab one. And yeah, even if this question is not related to cosplaying on a budget, any questions related to cosplay, feel free to ask us, as well as the other judge. Thank you for coming to our panel. Yeah, thank you. Were there any questions before we leave? All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. From my ears. All right. Give it up one more time for Baka Twins. Make sure to check out the table that's right by the stage. If you have any questions, they also have their business cards if you want to contact them later. Up next, it's going to be a performance. It's weird because I'm the announcer and I'm a performer, so I'm performing next. It'll be me, the surprise. So yeah, hold on while we set up, and we'll be right back with more.